Hi, my name's Maria, and I want to talk to you about my journey with struggling with depression, surviving depression, healing the emotions that were causing my depression, and then continuing to live and to help other women with depression. Now, I am not a doctor, a psychologist, a psychiatrist, or any other ist. I'm a transformologist actually, but I want to share my story, and I want to help women because women is my area of expertise. I'm a woman. I only know how women, our mind, our body, our heart, our soul works because it's very, very different to men. And I think that is a huge, huge factor that is very, very important in how we work with and heal from our emotional needs, from our emotional and mental health. We need to understand our biology. We need to understand our inherited emotional baggage, known as epigenetics. And we need to understand that our female brain processes, stores, and feels emotion differently. So I'm going to talk about them in a minute, but I wanted to share with you my story first. But I want you to stick around and hear those three crucial factors that I just mentioned, because they are so, so important for creating change, for healing the horrible, horrible pain that is depression. So, excuse me. So, I struggled with depression. My earliest memory of feeling depressed was around 15. I can remember really feeling alone, in feeling sad, in feeling like I wasn't good enough or I wasn't worthy, or what was the point of my life. And then at 18, it come and went, I'll tell you right now, for around 30 years. And then at 18, I had a major breakup, and I, was at a point where I felt like, and I thought about driving my car into a tree. So it had a big effect on me at that time, and I honestly couldn't understand this dark cloud that was within me. I could go out, be around people, socialise and laugh and sing and dance and drink, and be like a normal 18-year-old and putting on this amazing happy face. But everybody around me, they would have thought, I was just the life of the party. But then as soon as I was alone, I would cry so hard. I couldn't see. The tears were streaming down my face so hard, it was a wonder I didn't have a car accident sometimes driving home. And the not knowing why I felt this way, because I hadn't had, a major incident, a major trauma, a major tragedy in my life. I had lost people, some grandparents. I had had a car accident, and I know that did trigger some PTSD in me. I would scream whenever I got in a car and someone else was driving. They had to go about 80 k's an hour, because that whenever I was not in control of the steering wheel, I felt fear and out of control, and that could have had an impact on my depression as well. But as I went through my 20s, up and down and up and down, and really not understanding, what I was feeling, why I was feeling it. The why was the biggest thing that I remember. Why do I feel like this? Why am I so sad? Why can't I just pick myself up? Why can't I be happy like everybody else? Why me? And when I reached my 30s, it was like, oh my God, I'm old. Now that I'm almost 50, I know the 30's not, but in that moment, I was like, you know, this big hurdle from my 20s to my 30s. I just, oh my God, I felt so terrible. I had not found the love of my life, not married, not with children, living with children, having had children, which was my biggest and only goal and dream in life, was to have children. And I had lived, you know, most of my life thinking, you know, I will, you know, get married, have kids in my 20s. By the time I hit 30, I will have had 3 or 4. You know, I'll have the house and the picket fence, and that was this wasn't even a dream. It was just this thing, this feeling, this knowing, this expectation of what my life should have been, was going to be. And when it didn't happen, it was just like the end of the world. So I can't even, like, looking back, I'm trying not to look back until I get to this next section. But in those moments when I was alone, there was so many emotions: the loneliness, the grief at not having children, not having the life that everyone else had, the feeling rejected or feeling dejected, not having a person in my life, someone to share it with, but at the same time knowing that I was pushing them away because I was so damn sad. And the more sad and depressed and fearful and dejected and, you know, layer upon layer upon layer of these emotions, the more that I would push people away, the more that I felt angry and resentful and jealous. And that would cause me to, without even me realising, the words that come out of my mouth came out with venom. They came out with anger. They came out with sadness. With all of that emotion was pushing the words that came out, and how they came out, how I reacted, how I spoke to people. The emotion that we feel affects every single part of us. It affects how we think, how we feel, how we speak, how we carry our body, how we, you know, look at other people, or how we perceive other people and their actions and the way they talk. And it's just this endless cycle that gets worse and worse and worse and worse. And the thing that I didn't realise until I was in that stage of healing was that it was these emotions that were layered up on top of each other that caused the depression. And then there were more layers and more layers, the anger and the jealousy and the envy and the resentment and the hurt, and everything kept building and building and building. And I thought all the time, oh my God, I just wish I could die. I just wish I was gone. I can't stand this pain. I can't stand it. I don't want to live. What's the point? All of this rhetoric going around in my head, it was there and it was constant. I spent, you know, most of my 30s crying. I had 2 hip replacements, actually, when I was 32 and 36, 4 years apart. And in those times leading up to that, I also, you know, couldn't walk, I couldn't sit, I couldn't stand, I couldn't do anything because of the pain of these hips. So it stopped me from living, which created more sadness, more resentment, more why me, what's wrong with me, why did this happen, life's not fair, which created another layer, another depth. You know, I kept falling into this hole of depression, of despair, and I kept going down and down and down until I felt like I was in the bottom of a well looking up, and all I could see was darkness. You know, there was this speck of light, but the further I fell down, the further I got away from that light. And I wondered if I would ever find it. And I wanted to share because I know there are so many other people going through this that I wanted to make them aware that it's not just this depression, this word that we put everything in. We say that we're depressed, it's depression. I realized, and I just spoke about, but I realized that it is the layers of emotion that create the weight, I guess you would say. And that's one of the things that I guess you need to understand, you need to work out, you need to discover what they are to then start healing that. When I was 40, that was it, that was the end. 30 was bad, 40 was like, oh my God, that's it, that's the end of my opportunity to have kids, to get married, to have the life that I wanted, and yeah, that's it, that's the end. However, when I was at the absolute end, you know, the darkness couldn't possibly, there was just the tiniest little speck of light. I guess the speck of light stayed because I hoped, and that was what kept me alive day to day, was the hope that there was something that was going to come along and fix me. I had tried a lot of different things in that time. I had tried counselling and therapists, and it was really hard because I would go to the therapist and they'd say, okay, you know, tell me what's going on. And the moment I would just cry. I couldn't literally speak about it because it was so painful that I would just break down in tears and couldn't actually speak about it. And I think that's the same for a lot of people. They don't know how to explain it. They don't know exactly what it is. They don't know that it's, you know, 100 layers or 1,000 layers of stuff that's all meshed in and mixed in, and it's so damn heavy that you can't get up. So, and that's the reason I'm making this video. I want you to understand that someone else understands you are not alone. And I think this is the biggest thing. I watched a video earlier and it said that some people struggle with depression for 10 years before they will reach out and ask for help. And it's like we have to wait until we get to the absolute depths of despair before we seek that help. We're so conditioned, especially as female. This is why our biology is so important, but especially as female, we are conditioned to care about everybody else but ourselves. Yeah, does that resonate? Does that sound? I have to worry about everybody else. I have to deal with them. I have to help them. I have to be strong for them. I have to put on a mask and just pull up my big girl pants and get on with it. And I'll tell you right now, I absolutely hate that saying, put on your big girl pants and get on with it. Because only someone who has never struggled with depression can say that, because it is not that easy. It's absolutely not. And I'm certainly not going to tell you that it's that easy, that you're just going to flick a switch, that you can just get on with it, get over it. So many people will say, just get over it. And they'll say it with grief. They'll say it with sadness. They'll say it with, you know, all of those, you know, you've had 6 months, you've had 12 months, get on with it, get over it. You should be over it now. You should be able to get on. The thing is, we never know what layers, what's underneath somebody else's pain, because it's not ever just one thing. If I can just, I want to share my screen. I want to share with you a picture. Let's go like this. I want you to see these rocks, okay? Because it was the best thing I could sort of share with you to describe those layers. Okay, this is the Grand Canyon. And you know, we have places in Australia, I just couldn't find a photo, that, you know, you've had these massive, big mountains and thousands of years of weather have created these layers you can see now in the rock. There are layer upon layer upon layer that have been washed and windblown and had so much stuff happen. And this is what we are with our layers of emotion, okay? Because when I, in a minute, talk about epigenetics, you'll know that it's not just what's happened to you in this lifetime. But even if you were just to think about this lifetime, when you're a kid and someone told you you weren't good enough, or you were running a race and they, you know, you didn't go fast enough, or you didn't try hard enough, you're not good enough, that memory is stored in our mind, in our body, in our DNA, by the emotion we felt in that split second. Someone told you you were fat. Someone told you that, you know, something about your family, that's something that hurt, or it caused you to feel sad, or it caused you to feel angry, or it caused you to feel resentment. Okay, that emotion and that memory is stored in you forever, unless you can, you know, work a way to get rid of it, which I'll also talk about later. But, okay, so you think about that. You think about, you know, you lost a grandparent, a friend, something happened. You had trauma. The emotion was stored in you. I want you to understand that you have been layering layer upon layer upon layer of emotion your entire life. Okay, you didn't just get to a point where I struggle with depression, okay? And there are people that struggle with an imbalance of different things that clinical depression. But for the majority, it is this building up, because no one's teaching us this. No one's teaching us that we store our emotion, that it sits within us, stored in a memory bank in our mind. It's like a big filing cabinet where we've stored sadness. And then it happens again, and there's another sadness, and there's another sadness, and there's another grief, 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 hurt, 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 anger, anger, frustration, whatever they are, resentment, jealousy, fear, okay, overwhelmed. I feel overwhelmed and overwhelmed and overwhelmed. And it builds and builds and builds and builds. And then you put all of these layers together, and it's no wonder that we can't work through or get over or let go of, because there's just so damn much. Okay, layers, look at this. And it can feel like there are 1,000 layers of emotion that just weigh. Now, if you want to think about it in a different way, we all have a backpack. Say our emotions are a backpack. We've all got one. What size is your backpack? Is it a small one? Is it a super large one that you're carrying around? And every single time you feel an emotion, it's like picking up a rock and putting it in the backpack. So from when you were 4, 5, 6, 10, 15, every time you felt hurt, every time you felt sadness, every time someone told you you weren't good enough, every time that someone told you you were fat and it hurt, you put a rock in that backpack, okay? The weight would get heavy, and then you'd trudge on and you'd move on and you'd keep walking, and all of a sudden, well, you were used to this new weight, and then you put a few more rocks in your backpack, and a few more rocks and a few more rocks, and then it'd be, oh my God, this is so heavy. But then you keep trudging forward, and you just sort of, you know, this is what it is. This is life. This is what it is. I can't do anything about it. I don't know how to empty the backpack. I don't know how to work or release or let go of these emotions. So it gets heavier and heavier and heavier until, you know, one day it's going to be so heavy that you don't know that you can actually put one step in front of the other to move forward. This is what depression for me was. Okay, this is what I learned after I let go of my depression. I didn't know it while I was in it. That's why I want to share that with you so that you can sort of understand how this is working, how this is building, how day after day after day it gets heavier and heavier and harder. Some days you have these flattening out periods where you've got used to the weight. Think, okay, I'm coping, I'm dealing, I'm going okay. Until there's another rock and another rock and another rock in there. But what's the weight of these rocks? Are they little pebbles? Are they big boulders that are being put in this backpack that is your life, that is your body? It's not just mentally that these rocks affect, that these emotions affect, because the power of your thoughts affect every area of your body. They affect your functioning, heart, lungs, liver, you know, your immune system. Every single part of your body is affected by the weight of your emotions. And for a lot of us, it will trigger something else, you know. Our emotions can trigger this. We're thinking that, well, we're depressed and it's depression or it's anxiety. All of a sudden we've got it. Otherwise, for a lot of other people, it's this slow burn where it just creeps up and creeps up and creeps up. It's not just an instant. It can be, you know, there is no right or wrong in how it happened or how it come to be or what the trajectory or the journey that you had. If you feel it, I want you to understand that it is a layering of emotions. Event after event after event has created these emotions, and you're layered full of them. So it was just, you know, my way of showing, of just giving you a visual, you know, how heavy is your backpack now? There are varying levels. Everybody's going to be different. And the point of this and the rocks is to tell you that every single person who is struggling with depression has got there in a different way. The emotions that you feel are different to what I felt and what somebody else is going to feel, because it is your life events and your emotion and where you're at right now. You're viewing the world through your perception, and there is not another person on the entire planet that has the same perception that you do. There is not another person on the entire planet that is feeling exactly the same way that you are feeling, that has had the exact same rocks put in their backpack. That is impossible. They may have all felt grief, and they may have all felt sad, and they may have all felt hurt, they may have all felt rejected and resentment, but it was a different event that made them feel that. It is yours and yours alone. And that is why I think one size doesn't fit all. I tried so many different things not only psychology and counselling and therapy, I tried a lot of other modalities as well. And I always come back to feeling what's wrong with me. Why me? Why can't I do this? Why can't I shift? Why can't I change? I perceived that everybody else could do it because other people were using these services, other people were going through this, and were they moving forward? I don't know. I can't know anybody else's personal experience with this, what they were feeling and how they moved, whether they did or whether they were just like me and were wondering how everybody else did it because we weren't screaming from the rooftop that this isn't working. This isn't working. This isn't working. I'm not feeling better. I'm not changing. What the hell's wrong with me? So when I turned 40, like I said, I was at the bottom of this pit. There was just like this pinhole of light, but I was still searching. I was still searching for something because I wanted to change. I didn't want to die. I just wanted to be finished with the pain. I did not want to live in this pain because I can't even describe it now. And I certainly could not have described what it felt like back then. And I couldn't talk about because it was like scrambled eggs in my brain. Okay, it was scrambled. It was confusion. There wasn't a clear thing that I could say other than, and I think if you're watching this far along, you feel this and you know what it feels like. So talking to somebody is really hard because it's really hard to unscramble the mess that is these 100,000 layers of different emotions from different events that have happened throughout our life. And we just want the pain to end. We just want it to stop. We just want some quiet. We just want some peace. And when I was 40, and I want to share with you right now that is possible. It absolutely is. If you want it bad enough, it absolutely is. Because after trying so many different things, I kept trying because there was no other alternative. It was either die or keep trying. So I kept trying and I found this thing that was female specific. Okay, I got an email. It was just out of the blue, an email from a woman that I'd known years before through a business. We'd met. I live in New South Wales. She was in Queensland, but I had been up there, and through business, I met this woman. And she was amazing. And she spoke to the fact that I am a woman and my biology, every part of me, because I was born with a uterus, every part of me is different to every part that makes up a man. And because we are different, we have a hardware, a system, a blueprint that has us running a cycle every month. Believe it or not, from the moment we're born to the moment we die, we are running that cycle that is releasing hormones, okay? So, and that is for the whole and sole purpose of, we have a uterus, we have the programs, the software, the hardware, the blueprint to create life. Whether we use it or not, whether we have glitches in the system or not, because I know I'm a childless, not by choice woman. I know that there are glitches, there are problems, there are issues. However, we still run that cycle. And from the time we are born, okay, even though, for most of we're told that, when we get a period, when we're 13 was when it gets younger every year, but that's the start of your womanhood, and that is where you start this fluctuating hormones, this cycle, this 28 days. Science has proven that we have, even though it's very, very little, very, very small, that cycle is running from the time that we're born. They have tested 6-month-old baby girls, baby boys, girls have these hormones being released throughout their cycle, throughout that whole month, where boys have nothing. They're just completely flatline. Okay, so we have completely different running system. Now, we have our brain has to function differently to run this system. Okay? It is a completely different realm of unconscious, because we don't have to stop and think about those hormones being released, when they're released, which one's being released throughout that 28 days or whatever your cycle is. It happens unconsciously. So that is a realm of unconscious that the male brain does not have, cannot fathom. And the point I'm getting to here is, if they don't know it, cannot understand it, they cannot create a tool that can heal it. Because that's where all of this emotion, all of these layers that I've been talking about are stored in your unconscious. And that's why talking about it, or just saying get over it, or, you know, going to courses and programs and therapies when you're dealing at a conscious level doesn't work. You need to get into this deeper unconscious, because that is where everything is stored. And that is where we are very specifically female, okay? We can grow whether we do or not. We have the program that can grow a human life inside of us without our conscious thought. So any woman who has been pregnant knows that she doesn't have to stop and sit still and close her eyes and really think hard about, today I have to grow the spinal column. I'm going to have to eat really, really well for the next week, and I'm going to have to be really quiet. I'm going to have to be calm. I'm going to have to conserve my energy because I'm growing the heart. That is not how it works. We do it unconsciously. It happens because we have these programs. I just want to clearly identify we're different. We have different hardware, we have different software, we have different programs than the male. They have their own. They are here, they have specific programs for their specific role that they were created for. It just is what it is. There's no good, bad, there's no one's better than the other. We are just different, okay? And we have different programs, and we need to understand that we have these programs, because if we don't do that and we are always using programs that are created by the male brain for the male mind and the male body, we are never going to truly know what it feels like to be running a female system, to be healed and fully connected to ourselves. And that, I think, is where, you know, this healing from depression, from anxiety, from the sadness, from grief, from all of that shit that we're continually carrying around, and suppression, the suppression from generations, centuries of inherited suppression through our gender, has to come from us knowing our female software, our hardware, and knowing that we need female created, innovated tools and methods and education. That's where healing is going to happen, where we're going to get better mental and emotional, spiritual, physical health is going to come from knowing that we are different. It is crucial. It is so, so very important. When I worked with this female specific tool, I went from depressed, I was sad, I was lonely, I was desperate, I was so angry that I was yelling and screaming at people who would say hello. And I couldn't help it. And sometimes I could hear myself and I still couldn't help it. The pain, anger comes from pain. Even if they don't realise that's what it is. There's some hurt people hurt people. So if they're hurting you, they're lashing out, saying bad things, then they are hurting for some reason, for some way also. And I went from that to wow, I'm okay. I had this level of emptiness, like I'd cleared out a section of crap. You know, I had the very first, when I was 40, it was a couple of months after my 40th birthday. I was at the absolute worst, desperate place in my life. And in 3 days, this intensive, which we don't do quite so much anymore. It's very specific, very one-on-one, very intimate with one person, because it is, every single one of us is different in what we've gone through to how we've got to the place that we are. Okay, depressed is not just depressed. Depression is not just anxiety, is not just anxiety. Every single person is different in the layers that they have, in the rocks that they're carrying, and in what they need to support and help you or them work through this, work and release this, resolve the issues to let it go. So I had this 3-day intensive working on sadness, working on anger, working on feeling impatient and rejected, and I can't even remember, it was almost 10 years ago, but I had 3 days, and it was working on one emotion at a time. Okay, I was working on depression, I was working on sadness, I was working on anger, and each of them individually, because individually we need to unlayer what it was that got us to that point and what the emotion was. Because for somebody else, grief, it could be loss. Okay, angry for somebody else could be mad. I feel mad. That's what I feel. I'm fucking pissed off. I'm frustrated. Can you understand? Different people from different eras, from different generations, are going to have a different word for what they feel. Their emotion is their own, and nobody's emotion is exactly the same as yours. It just isn't. And we do have to get away from this one size fits all crap, because it doesn't work. If all the things that we're using, all the tools and all the resources and all the therapists and all the modalities, if they worked, then there wouldn't be billions of people on the planet that are depressed. There wouldn't be 10 people a day committing suicide just in one state or is it one country. How many people are dying because of mental health? I myself want to call it emotional health, because it is our emotions that have built up and built up and built up. They're layer upon layer upon layer. And it's the experience that we had when we felt that emotion that is stored. It's the experience that has triggered the emotion, and there is not another person in the whole entire world, even if they lived in the same house as you, they're not experiencing, they might be experiencing some, not never all, but some of the same events. They will have felt differently about it because of what we've had already stored in our DNA. So I guess that leads me into epigenetics, which, if you haven't heard of it, it's science. It's been around for about 40 years. Scientists have proven that we inherit around 14 generations, not around, definitely at least 14 generations. But in 40 years, in another 40 years, they could then say, you know what, we have inherited, we can now prove we've inherited 28 generations, 50 generations, 100 generations of stored emotional baggage. So if your grandmother, your great-grandfather, great, your bloodline ancestors inherited or felt what they felt, like I said, is stored in their DNA. And we are 98% of people are unaware that that stored emotion, that trauma, that pain has been passed down because you've got the DNA of your ancestors. So even if we just think the last 300 years, think 100 years, how many of your ancestors went to war? We've had, what, 4 or 5 wars just in the last 100 years, maybe more for different countries in different areas of the world. I'm just thinking World War I, World War II, there was a Korean War, there's Vietnam War, Iraq War. How many of your ancestors, in your bloodline, have went to those? What would they have felt? What would they have experienced? What emotions would they have stored in their DNA? Trauma, for sure. If they've had to kill someone, or if they've seen somebody else killed, survivor guilt. Anyone who's been in a car accident, someone's died, someone's lived, there'd be survivor. There's guilt, there's hurt, there's why me? Why did this happen? Life's unfair. And a million other, beliefs are just as important. That conditioning, the patterns, the beliefs that we have, we store them throughout our life, plus we've inherited what they've been from other generations. So if you think about your mother, your grandmother, your great-grandmother, how many people did they lose in their life? How much grief and loss is being stored in their DNA to be passed through to our DNA? This may kind of explain, if you think about, there was 4 of you, say you and 3 other friends were in a car accident, okay? All of you survived, but all of you reacted differently when you walked away. One was just totally panicked, trauma response, PTSD, can't get in a car, can't drive, won't go anywhere, won't talk to anyone, depressed. Oh, that was one friend. Another friend, they're okay, but they've sort of shut themselves off. They're a bit angry now. They're snapping. They won't come out. They won't, go out to the pub and have a drink like they used to do. One didn't feel anything, just got on with life as normal. And you're thinking, why is everybody feeling different? We all went through the same experience. Why am I struggling when, friend B isn't struggling at all? And do I feel guilty because friend 4 is absolutely, completely traumatized and I'm not? And we wonder, we get in this headspace of, what's wrong with me? Or am I being, cruel for not feeling the same way they are? Should I feel guilty because I'm not, feeling as badly as they are? Or am I feeling terrible because I feel worse than they are and they've managed to get on with them? They've managed to get on with life. What the hell's wrong with me? Every single thing that happens to us goes through our filters of all our past events and all that we've inherited from the past. So we could be in a split second triggered into a trauma response, into depression, into anxiety, into stress, into grief, into something, and we don't understand why, because it's connected to this stored emotion. And this is why, again, the one size fits all doesn't and won't help you, because everything that you're going through is different to the person sitting next to you. Your brother, you've lived in the same house, you've had the same events for part of your life. And you think, well, why is he different to me? He goes to school, he has different friends, he spends more time with his uncle out fishing where you spend more time with your aunt somewhere else. You have different experiences even if you're living in the same house. I spoke to a woman who was, this is a couple of years ago, I spoke to a woman who was in her, she would have been in her mid-60s, I think. And they had a parent, her and a brother. Their parent had died and they were, packing up the house. They were doing something and they were spending time together and really talking, which they hadn't done for quite some time. And she said something about an event. And he said, oh, I don't know how you did that. It was him, a male said, I don't know how you do that. I would be just worried about what other people think of me. I wouldn't have been able to do it because I would have been worried about what people think of me. I know this is a big thing that women have, but this woman, she said, what do you mean? I don't care what people think of me. Why would that stop you? And her brother said to her, I have spent my entire life worrying about what other people think of me. And this woman said, it never occurred to me to think about what other people thought. It never occurred to me that you would be held back by what other people think. So even if you grow up in the same house, you're going to feel differently. And don't ever think that there is something wrong with you if you feel differently, if you're struggling more, if you're depressed and the rest of your family is not. Okay, this is not just your life experience. It's that epigenetic, it's that inherited. It has a place to play. It has an effect on where you're at, where your start point was, how you've been triggered in every step and every event in your life since then. And you have no control over that. You probably don't even know, well, you wouldn't have been aware, but you don't even now that if you now have that awareness, you're not able to know what it is that's stored in your DNA until it triggers something within you to bring it to light. Okay, so the biology, you being a female, the epigenetics, and I think within those two, I've sort of covered how those two relate to how we feel, how we process that information, how we store that information. Every single event is stored by emotion. So there will be times if someone says to you, you know what, I met you here at this event and you have no recollection, it was because you actually never felt any emotion to attach that to the memory. But you will remember some stranger who you met who said you look fat. You'll remember them forever. It's there, it's stored forever. Okay, it's funny how the mind works, but it is connected. Event, emotion, stored. If you have an event and you don't place emotion, it doesn't store. But if there's emotion, then it is stored there forever. I can remember I was in my 20s, so like 20 years ago, we went to a nightclub in Sydney somewhere. I'm from the country, I don't get there very often. But we were girlfriends, a group of us sitting around drinking cocktails, and a woman walked past and she had the same shirt on that I was wearing. And she commented how bad I looked in that shirt. And I heard her and I still remember it. I don't have any emotion attached to it now because I've managed to release that, but I still have the memory. The emotion's not connected to it. So this is what I think is the most important thing of today. And I've spoke way too long. I hope you're still here. I hope someone's still watching. But we can cut the ties with the emotion in the event, okay? We can cut the ties, the past emotion. Basically, we can empty out the backpack. Piss that thing off. Take it off. Chuck it away. It's not to say that you won't start collecting rocks again, but you won't collect them in the same way. You won't have that epigenetic stuff that has triggered you into emotions, into existence right now. But the first step of that is actually recognizing and working out what those rocks are, what those emotions are. I can just screen share again. Now I've worked, wait, let me do it. Let me do it. Anyway, okay, so we have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of emotions What if I do this? There we go. Let's see that. Let's share screen now. Sorry, people. No, still not. Anyway, all right. All right. There are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of emotions. There is a list of common emotions, okay? Things like sadness, things like anger, things like frustration, fear, guilt, hurt, rejection, resentment, shame. And there are some things that are really, really big for women that are not so big for men. But when I talk men and women, okay, there is always an exception. There is always an exception to the rule. There are, you know, some women who have more testosterone running, they have more right brain than left brain, you know, they're functioning differently. They have more of one hormone or whatever. And the same with men, like that story I just shared about the man who was always worried about what people think. Okay, that's probably 1 in 10 that struggle in that way, where 4 out of 5 or 5 out of 6 women will struggle and one won't. There is always the exception. But shame is a really big thing for women because we've been made to feel that throughout history. Suppression, huge in women. Self-doubt, self-loathing, big for a lot of women. Feeling not heard, feeling not seen, fear of success, fear of being heard, fear of being seen. These are really big things, and there are reasons for it, and a lot of it would be. It may have been triggered in this lifetime, but a lot of it has been from past generations where they weren't allowed to be seen and heard. You go back a couple of centuries, women were not allowed to work. They were not allowed to be out by themselves. They went from their fathers to their husbands and that was it. There was a time in history where women were not allowed to use herbs. They were not allowed to heal themselves. They were not even allowed to say that they had intuition, that they had a knowing within them of what was going to heal themselves. They could go out and grab a plant and know that that was the thing that was going to heal this certain part. We are back to holistic health right now, but back centuries ago, if women used holistic health, they were thought to be a witch, and that would lead to death. Now, you might think if you haven't done anything about this kind of history, you would think, oh yeah, you know, Joan of Arc, you know, 2 or 3 others, it wasn't really a big thing. But there were 9 million women, 9 million women who were killed because somebody, a man, and I'm not anti-man, don't get me wrong, but that was what was going on at that time in history, said that, you know, we're all powerful and women are not. And if they believe that they can do this or they can do that, then they've got to be a witch and we've got to wipe them out. We've got to keep women suppressed. There was a time in history where women were taken into the town square once a month and they were put on scales. And if they weighed lighter than what some man deemed to be the ideal weight, if they were lighter, then they were deemed to be using herbs to be a witch and therefore were burned at the stake. Why are so many women overweight, especially when they're stressed, especially in this time of overwhelm and stressed out and anxiety and depression? They've triggered this protection mechanism. Why don't women want to be seen? Why don't they want to be heard? Because it could lead to death. Now, if you've got a coach that's telling you, just do it, all you got to do is just do it, and you get this fear response, this procrastination, there is something deeper that they don't understand. This put on your big girl pants and just do it anyway. It just keeps triggering this fear in you because it's there, it's in your DNA, it's so fucking deep that you don't know what it is. but there's something there. And it is probably the fear of being hurt, fear of being seen, fear of death, fear of being rejected. If you were rejected at any point in history, it meant you were chucked out of your house. If you were a caveman, you were eaten by a wild animal. If you were rejected from your herd, your group, your family, your tribe, not herd, your tribe, okay? Any time through history, rejection could lead to isolation, loneliness, or death. They're not just in our day right now, and you know, you might be rejected from a group of women, you might be rejected from a job, you might be, and it's not going to lead to the same thing, but it triggers in us this response from centuries ago. You've got this fear in your DNA. So there is a lot about how we store emotions, how we feel, how we react, how we deal, that nobody else is talking about. Nobody else is connecting it with the growing rate of women feeling, and men, but women feeling depression and anxiety as well. Okay, these are big things, but a lot of the time, not always, but a lot of the time, it is because there are these layers of emotion, these backpack, these bags full of rocks, full of emotions, full of beliefs, full of past conditioning. And every single one of them has built to where you are now. So if you take the time to work out, and perhaps you need someone like me to help you identify those rocks, those emotions, to see what your next step is to heal that. I have been working with women for 7 years in helping them, one, identify and then create a plan that can then cut the ties with those emotions. If you're right, if you're ready, you have to be ready, you have to want it, you have to be, I am so fucking sick of being where I am, sick of this noise, sick of this pain, sick of feeling like shit. I want to feel better. I want to remember the girl I was when I was 4 years old. I want to get back to that. Go and find a photo of you when you were 3, 4, 2, 3, 4. This was one of the first things that I did in my journey. When I turned 40, everything before that was sort of getting me ready, but this healing happened from when I turned 40. And it was one of the first things that I did in this journey. And I went back and I looked at this photo, and that photo triggered in me, trigger's probably the wrong word, but I could feel, looking at that photo, I felt that that girl, which is the same girl, I'm still the same person, I didn't change, the emotions changed, the weight of the rocks changed me, but I was still the same person. I am still the same person. When I looked at that photo, I could see that she had joy and she had confidence and she had self-love. She was just happy. She was just at peace. You know, she just was being. She was just being a 4-year-old. And she was just loving life. She was surrounded. She knew that she was safe. She knew she was protected. She knew she was loved. She didn't get back to that. You are still the same person. A lot's happened. A lot's changed. But it is still possible. It's more than possible to get back to clearing out that big bag of rocks. I guess that's the best way of describing it. When I say a big bag of rocks, you can picture that backpack or that bag, and you can see the rocks. Think about how many that you've put in there. Do you know that that's what you're doing? That every time you have an event, and it could be as simple as walking down the street and someone looks at you sideways and they've got a shitty look on their face and you take it personally As women, we do that. Men don't, because they don't notice the shitty ass look on someone's face. Their retinas, we have a different retina cell in our eyes. We see finer details. We see when a woman frowns her eyebrows, or when she flares a nose, or a mouth's crooked, or we notice these fine features. So somebody can look at us in a negative way and we take it personally. What did I do? What's wrong with me? Why don't they like me? What did I do? Don't they like me? Have I got something on my face? We think something about us. We make everything personal. Yeah? The boss comes into work. He's got the shit. You think, what did I do? I wonder whether he didn't like that report I did. Has he got the shits with me? We make it about us. That is part of our female blueprint. It's a shitty one, but if we know it, we can stop it. If we know it, we have awareness, we clear out the shit, we can stop doing that. But man doesn't do that. If boss comes into work, he says, oh, I probably didn't get laid last night, and never gives that another thought. Well, we ruminate on it all day thinking, what did we do? What's wrong with me? Why has he got the shits with me? We drive ourselves crazy overthinking everything. It goes back to our female factor, our female blueprint. We are so different. Our brain works differently. Our eyes work differently. Everything works differently. So you need to find the female tool that will work for you. As a female, you need that. Now, if you've stuck to the end and you've got something out of this and you know that you want change, no matter what, because I only work with women who are dead set serious about change, because that's where you have to be to do the work, to put the work in to get that change. If you're there, I am offering a phone call. It is paid because you have to invest in yourself. To prove that you are ready, you have to invest in yourself. It's only a tenth of what I could charge for it. But somewhere in the comments, I'm going to put a link to a calendar call. It's going to cost you $149, and we are going to get super clear on what we can identify, what those rocks are in your backpack. What are the emotions and what are the beliefs that are holding you stuck? And you can start to see that depression isn't this one big fucking thing that you can't deal with. You're going to see that it is a dozen, 2 dozen, 50, 100 different emotions that you can work on one at a time. Sadness, shame, grief, guilt, hurt, rejection, loss, fear. But with fear, we'll probably dive a little bit deeper because we want to know fear of success, fear of failure, fear of being judged, fear of the dark, whatever it is. It'll be specific to you, to what you know. And trust me, I can pick up a lot more in your language than you're currently aware of. That is what I've been trained to do. But I want you to know it's not the story, it's not the events that I'm interested in. It's not that is the problem. It is the emotion that you have attached to the event, to the memory. And it is the emotion that we work on. And the reason why it works is that we work on this one at a time. But this is just a call. It is an initial call to work out what is in your backpack, how much weight you are carrying. And then we'll determine if and what the next step is for you. And if we go to the next step, if you go to the next program, then I'll take the cost of the call off, whatever that is. But that is your first step. And you have to want to change. You have to want to get rid of it. If you want to stay stuck in the shit, then that's completely up to you. Everybody has a journey to go through, and they need to go through all the different stages, the awareness, the knowledge, the anger, the peace, the whatever. You need to And no one's going to judge. There is no judgment. There is no right or wrong. There is no time frame. It just is what it is. And you'll know if this resonated, if there was something in this that made sense for you. You know what? Yes, I feel this. I know I feel this, but I know there's other shit. It's too confusing. If you think it's too confusing, then you just come and have that conversation and I'll pick it out. Okay? You don't have to tell me the events, but you have to start to share. You have to be able to speak at least. Okay? We can give it a go. But you can have that conversation, that initial call to start unpacking what's in that backpack. Create an awareness about what it is that's ready for you. And the last thing I'm going to say is, 1, you're not alone, and 2, you do not have to stay stuck in this shit, in this emotional turmoil and pain. You do not have to struggle through life. I don't care how many other things you've tried, because I know I tried 100 too, but I can guarantee you haven't tried something that is female specific, created for your female mind, your female biology, your female cycle, hormones, and you haven't tried something that is working on your inherited stuff as well. Those two combined, all right? If you want more information, follow me on Facebook. I'll leave that link here too somewhere, but book in for a call if you're serious about wanting to unpack that backpack. Bye for now.